Welcome back to another episode of the Miami Heat Roundtable. I'm your host, Amir. Joining us today, we have Ernest. You can find him at Miami Heat Talk. We also got Trent. You can find him at the Miami Heat Network. And for today's roundtable, really excited because we got a special guest joining us. We got Brady Hawk from the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for hopping on, Brady.
Yes, sir. Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, no problem, man.
Anytime.
So the NBA season is finally back tonight. So really excited. It's been a long off season. The Miami Heat season starts tomorrow officially versus the Orlando Magic. Before we talk about the upcoming regular season, I do want to touch on the preseason real quick, Brady. So the Miami Heat appeared to follow the math and the analytics for once this preseason. So adjusting its shot profile in hopes of producing a more effective and efficient offense. And so that means fewer mid-range shots outside of the paint. So Spo talked about how we want to, or maybe it was Tyler Hero said we want to focus on more layups, so finishing at the rim and obviously shooting more threes. And to do that, it looks like the strategy this preseason was the 5-out motion offense to put up more threes, to open up the paint, to get to the rim. Also, the goal was to play a little bit faster, so we saw more transition basketball, which was finally fun to see. So my question to you, Brady, is do you think this is going to be a sustainable strategy? Like, is Spo actually going to leverage this in the regular season? Are we going to see Bam shooting more threes, or do you think he's going to go back to his old ways?
I don't think the sustainability part is a SPO thing. I think it's more on the players. I'm curious to see if they're going to buy in because look, it's a taxing style. Like to just play into this, it's very easy to flow into like natural, just pick and roll offense and just play that game. But when you're playing this total movement, when you have like your star players that have to be off ball cutters and screeners and movers, like it is taxing. So it's fun right now and it's working. But that, to your point, it's the question: it's the consistency. Uh, but I will say, I think there will be buy-in from this team because I think they realized they needed a new offense. I think they're sick of the style that they were playing, and I think there is a real buy-in across the board. Guys like Jimmy, I don't think needs. He doesn't want to play just total pick and roll basketball. And if whoever has the pick and roll, everybody's just standing around in the corner of the wing. They want to move around. He's such a natural, good cutter on that baseline and everywhere else. I think they are going to lean into this. And as you mentioned, the Bam shooting part of this is what unlocks it all. Like that's what literally gets it back to everything is that you're able to run this 5-out offense, give yourself driving lanes, gives you the opportunity to eliminate mid-range shots. Like it's easy to say you don't want to take mid-range shots, but when teams are forcing you into them, it's another thing. But when you change the offense to like make sure everything is going toward the rim or you're running a drive and kick offense, and you've mentioned the preseason, a lot of what we saw was Tyler or Terry kind of running the show, driving to the basket. And if they didn't have a layup, it's a kick out to that opposite corner with a hammer screen from Bam or Jimmy, and it's Tyler or Terry shooting a three in that corner. So they're buying into this style. I will say I would push back on maybe the pace. I don't know if that's going to be a consistent thing as well. You're going to see like these teams, these lineups be mixed as well. Like we're seeing a first unit, second unit, third unit, fourth unit in the preseason. So things are going to start mixing in with the rotation here soon. I don't know how the pace is going to look all together, like when you're playing consistently throughout games. So that I'm curious to see. It's going to be a lot of Jovic, going to be a lot of Terry. But I'm confident of what I've seen, at least in the half court offense. I think it's a good sign early, but it's about consistency.
Okay. Good point, bro. Appreciate that, Brady. I mean, I'm really excited about the new Miami Heat offense, the way it's looking. I'm looking to see how they translate that into the season. So that's very exciting. But one thing I do want to ask you, my guy, and I'm sure a lot of Heat fans are gonna have their ear glued to this one because one thing we saw in the preseason was kind of like what the rotation is gonna be. You saw the starting lineup, you saw who was coming off the bench. One main guy we didn't see coming off the bench is the first round pick. Khalil Ware. You saw him finishing games with the young guys. You know, that was fun. You saw him chase down blocks. But my question for you, my guy, do you think that it's more going to start with the season with Spo going more towards Kevin Love and Thomas Bryant, and then Ware would be acclimated in? Or do you think this is going to be like a Bam Adebayo first season? You're not really going to see a lot of them unless there's injuries occurred. What do you think?
So I'll say it definitely is pretty clear he's the fourth big on this roster right now. Like, and I think I think we knew Love would kind of be the second big coming in. The surprise factor was that Spo trusts Thomas Bryant more than Ware at this stage, which I think it definitely was surprising. In my eyes, I think Ware has a season sort of like best case scenario, it's like Jovic last year. And that's best case scenario where it's he doesn't play first 41 games, second half of the season. It's like, okay, Love is logging a lot of minutes early in the season. We have to find a way to plug something in here. And it's like, okay, Ware's developed throughout the season. Let's see what he can do. Other than that, I don't really see him being in the rotation. Like, it seems like this is going to be kind of one of those long-term projects. And when I say long-term, I just mean kind of waiting out a year. Like, it's just not playing major minutes in his rookie season. He's fun. There's flashy. I'm more of a fan, especially in preseason. I was pushing for him to play more than like a guy like Thomas Bryant. You know what you have with Thomas Bryant. There's still the unknown with Ware. If you're going to have meaningless minutes, play Ware and let him figure it out. It all comes down to defensively. If he's able to figure things out and be just serviceable on defense in that drop and not make many mistakes, he'll play. Like, that's fine. That's all they need in the backup big. But I do think there is a little bit of development to be made with like the stuff that he had, early in the draft process, which is like the consistency of his game and just putting it all out there, the workhorse stuff. He's getting pushed around a little bit in the preseason. So I just think he's going to bulk up. He's going to get bigger. He's going to get stronger. It's going to be all this stuff outside the scenes that we're not seeing. And then, like I said, best case scenario, he plays down the stretch of the regular season and we see where we go from there. But it feels like it's going to be, a lot of DNPs throughout this regular season.
Got to hit those threes also.
What's up, Brady? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
So my question is to you, man, and thanks for hopping on the show. The Heat feel like they need to choose a direction, right? With Jimmy's extension and with all the young talent that we have, I'm a little confused when it comes to the Heat, right? You got Kel'el Ware, who is one of the best players on the roster, obviously including Jimmy, Bam, and Tyler, in my opinion. But you just said they're not going to be playing as much, and they're going to have TB and K Love, right? So are we developing these young guys? Or are we contending? Because I feel like they're trying to be in the middle of it, and that's not how it works in the NBA. Like, you have to choose a direction. You see the Suns, even though it's not working out, they're trying to compete for championships. The Sixers, the Knicks, even if it's not working out, we know the direction. The Heat is like, okay, we got Jimmy, Tyler, Bam, and Terry. Is that going to get the job done? But then we got Jaime, Jovic, Kel'el Ware, Kashad Johnson, and you can add Drew Smith to that. Like, what direction are they going to go? And then, this is kind of thinking about the future. Like, after this season, what's up with Jimmy? Like, Jimmy's like, his mindset kind of seems like he's locked in. But then again, he's like, even if they offered me a contract, I don't know how true that is, I'm not accepting it right now. So what's going on with this Heat team, and like, what direction are they going? What's going on with Jimmy? Like, do you think it's going to spill into the offseason where it gets toxic? Is Tyler? Is it Terry? Kind of threw a lot of questions at you, but like, I'm still kind of, I don't know,
For sure. I think it depends on who you ask in terms of the direction thing, because I think they're clearly in the middle. To your point, when you're a playing team, you're in the middle. Like, if you're not at the top 5, top 6 in the East, and you're also not at the bottom of the team, you're middle ground. And when you bring back similar roster over and over again, it's clear you're not, picking a direction, as you're saying. It feels like this team, if they were totally contending, they're in the works of a consolidation trade. Like, they have enough young pieces, the guys that you mentioned, like the Jaimes, the Jovic's of the world, that they could do that. But I don't think they're fully in that mode. Like, they'll say they're contending, like they're playing for championships, they're playing to win. They feel like they can go on runs, but they're not going to give up on the young part that you're talking about. And that that decision that they're unable to make, and we're, battling back and forth with, is why they haven't picked a direction. And it all comes back to Jimmy, like you said. Like, it's all on kind of the extension stuff, but there's no predicting it. There's no predicting. We can't say you're going to pick a direction at this trade deadline, because nobody knows what's going to happen in the offseason. Nobody knows what's going to happen, play out this season, play out in the playoffs, and what his mindset's going to be at that time. Because what he's saying now could be totally different than what we're hearing in June. So I think it was promising what he was saying now compared to what we heard in the summer. Like, the stuff that he's saying where he's not worried about the money. And we all know everybody's worried about the money. It's to some degree here, but like, saying the right things in terms of like wanting to be back and pushing that direction, I think was important. So they're going to play it on their timeline, but I don't see them picking the direction of going full youth, of going full rebuild or anything in that direction. And that's why it gets a little middle groundish. And it comes back to the point in the playoffs where it's somebody having to play superhero ball, where it's Jimmy having to go nuclear to kind of carry a roster, or your role players just have to be playing at an above average level as we've seen in the past on certain runs. So that's kind of the predicament they're in. But I just, to answer your question, just as a full, like, I don't see them picking a direction because I think they realize they're kind of in the middle. They have good young players, but they have a guy that in Jimmy that's ready to win now.
So my part two question would be to that too, right? So Tyler, I think Tyler came in a little bit different this year, right? He came into the interviews like talking about like last year, I'm trying to be an all-star, I'm trying to do this, I'm trying to do that. Do you and this question might be a little funny, but I'm not a big Tyler Hero fan. So do you think Tyler realized I'm not that good for me to be acting like I should be a starter? I'm an all-star, I'm this, I'm that. And he's like, I'm about to just accept my role and see what happens. Or do you think he's just kind of like whatever happens, whatever? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, what do you think is going on with Tyler? Because Tyler been involved in trade rumors. He's been going back and forth with fans, and it gets to him, I can tell. But like, what's like, do you think the Terry and Tyler thing can work? Like preseason, you can tell a little bit, but we got an 82 game season starting today. The big dogs, it's the season today. So, like, do you think that can work out? And do you think Tyler can stay healthy? Because the dude he already missed. He didn't miss much time, but he said, I was just working too hard, so I got a little sore. What do you mean you working too hard? Like, if you're working hard, you're already getting injured. That's a concern to me. So, what's going on with Tyler? Like, you think he eventually does get traded? Because I feel like he's been brought up in trades and every year.
So I think even if you're been anti-Tyler over the Heat tenure, I think this is the most promising opening to a season that you could have because I thought his approach and everything was really genuine. Like you said it before, like he came in previously, he talked about wanting to be an all-star, personal accolades, wanting to average 25 points a game, wanting the ball in his hands, wanting to start, wanting to do all this stuff. And he came in this year and he's like, I'll take a back seat offensively. I'll play off ball. I realize I said that stuff in the past. I don't really care what role you put me in. I just want to win. And I think there's a realization, I think, as well, that it's like they have to play the style to win, and he has to play it. Like there's just a realization there. And Spo had a conversation with him. Spo talked in this offseason about style of play in the offense, and it all came back. And they didn't say it at the beginning, but I think everybody realized it was like, we want you to have less dribbles, less pick and roll, like less with the ball in your hands because you're partly because we want you like less bogged down offense, but also he's a really good spot up shooter. Like when he first came into the draft, he was called a specialist. He was getting compared to Nick Stauskas. So I just think there's certain things there where you look at this season. Terry and Tyler is the dynamic that is their upside and is their floor. Like I think it's both. I think it's what takes them to the next level offensively, but I think the inefficient games that we saw last season at times could really hurt them. And if there is an efficiency here where it's Tyler taking more stuff not off the dribble and kind of off spot ups, and Terry kind of knows his role now too, where it's like he's not going to be getting up the shot attempts that we once expected. It's not going to be the shot attempts that we saw late in the season last year. Like he's going to be playing a much more efficient style. That if this can happen consistently, the stuff we saw in preseason, I think it can work. Now the question is, as we said at the beginning of the show, how long is this going to last fully? So I think it's promising. The other thing I'll say to add on with Tyler, the guy is such a good mid-range shooter, and the fact that he's like willing to sacrifice the mid-range fully, like, and we'll see how long that lasts as well. But like he didn't take one mid-range, I don't believe. He took like maybe 2 total in the preseason. So him being able to eliminate that for the offense is like greater good and turn those into more drives because he got to the rim a little bit more, which is important. If he could turn that into more free throw attempts, that's important. So he said all the right things. He did all the right things in preseason, but ultimately it's always going to come down to playoffs with him. So nobody's going to give him the credit, even if he comes out the gate hot. And it's not going to come out, and nobody's going to give him the credit unless he plays 70 games, if he plays a good portion of the game. So until he proves both those things, he's still going to have that thing over his head. But I think it's a good start. You can't knock him for the start of the season. He's come out doing the right things.
I mean, it makes sense too. He's played 67 games, is the most he's played in a season, and he's only 24 years old. So we need him on the court. So availability was the biggest thing that Pat Riley brought up, at the end of year presser. And then obviously this year it's a focus. And Jimmy has been saying, I don't care about the money, yada, yada, yada. I just want to play and win, and I want to play as many games as possible. Tyler, I think, had a quote today or yesterday saying the same thing. Like, I don't really care. Again, I'm bought into my role. Like I am a good off ball player, right? Because I didn't realize how good of an off ball shooter I am. So he's buying into the system. He knows he needs to be available. But the thing here is we've never been healthy for the past 6 years, and it's like since Jimmy Butler's joined this team. I mean, Jimmy Butler's never missed less than 20 games per season, right? He's missed 100 games in 5 years. So my question to you though is, how much faith do you have in this team if they are healthy? Let's say miraculously this is the healthiest season we've had, and we have multiple guys who played 70 games. So what seed do you think the Miami Heat can finish in if healthy, and how far do you think they can actually go in the playoffs if we have a locked-in Jimmy Butler, Tyler buying into this role? Obviously, defense is going to be there, but just playing a more modern style of offense, how far do you think this team can go?
So if I'm going like best case scenario, all things align, and they're fully healthy, I think they could be a top 4 seed. And that's probably the ceiling there is around 4, I would say. Just because I think there's some like Philly starting the season with like their Paul George and Embiid already out a week, and they're seeing these injury problems. Milwaukee getting older. They're very thin in their rotation as well. Where I look at Miami, at least they have depth to make up for the injuries that are like the injuries, meaning like here and there, like missing a game, not like the injuries that we've seen in the last few years where it's like long periods of time, where it's week to week. And it's like we're hearing the going to the Spo thing, and he's talking about, they're progressing. Like, no, not those injuries. But I do think, like, if this offense could continue, the young guys' upside, I think the biggest one to me that really does move the needle is Jaime Hawkins. I think he's the guy that kind of moves them in the standings in the regular season. If he's in the 6 man of the year running, if he's kind of the energy ball that Tyler was in 2022 off the bench, like when he hits the scorer's table, arena goes nuts, and he comes in and just an immediate offensive firepower, just somebody that can just get you a bucket immediately. I think he could move the needle. The defense is kind of my biggest question heading into the season. Everybody's been talking about Terry and Tyler offensively. How will they work? I kind of felt like they'd figured out. I was more worried about what that unit was going to look like defensively. Once again, good start. Like they're forcing turnovers. Both of them are active, getting steals and doing that stuff. I'm not sure how long that'll last. Like when they're playing real teams, like good teams in the East and West, they're going to get hunted like they just are. Like, and especially at the end of games that they're closing, they're going to they're going to be stuck on mismatches. So I'm curious to see how the defense looks. They're going to have to lean into their wings. They have to lean into Jaime if he's defending at a higher level. They have to lean into Haywood Highsmith. Jimmy is going to have to guard actual guards this year. Because I look at the point of attack once again. Jay Rich, maybe if he returns, guards some point of attack. But other than that, I'm looking around this roster and I'm like, it's Haywood and it's Jimmy. So Jimmy's going to have a kind of a larger to just do more defensively. So if they could find a way to be a top 10 defense again, because they were top 5 last year. So I'm saying to myself, if they're going to take a leap offensively and not be bottom 10 again, so if they're going to take a leap offensively, they could be around where they were defensively and just say, let's say top 10. I think they could be, they're not a playing team at that point. If that's the adjustments you're making, you're not a playing team. And then you mentioned the playoff part, that's always to be seen. Like if you match up with a New York, I can promise you, nobody on this team is worried about Karl Anthony Towns acquisitions. Like people were, I heard you may not like this because I know you may not like Tyler's comments, but I know he said something along the lines of Minnesota may have won that trade. Like that, like they're not. This whole organization is not worried about those type of teams. So I do think they believe they can beat anybody when they get to the playoffs. But Boston, it's just got a lot of firepower on that team that they're going to have to have a lot of things break right. But I really do believe that if they lean into this stuff that we're talking about, they're not a playing team and they could be around the 4 to 6 range.
I agree. I think they can even be higher. Shoot. But I got one more for you, Brady. And I really love how you went over the defense because that makes a lot of sense. We've always been a top defensive team. So if we can get our offense top 10 and be that same defensive team, absolutely right. Why can't we get top 4? But my question is kind of going back to the offense because now you're going to have Terry Rozier for a full year with Tyler, Jimmy, and Bam. I think because of what we saw in Team USA and the change of his offensive game, personally, I think it's time to give Bam the keys. And when I say the keys, I mean to be the number one focal point option in the offense. I do feel that having these 4 guys, you may not see not one of these players crack an average of 20 points a game. But my question with you, Brady, because you really know the X and O's of this team, especially with the offense, do you think it's time that the Heat should look at Bam as a number one option or kind of say, hey, whoever's hot, go?
I don't think it's crazy. I just think it's tough. So it's one adjustment at a time here is kind of their perspective. Like they're making the adjustment to the 3-point stuff and the 3-point offense. There's layers to this that I think they could see. So like I don't think this is a day one of the regular season. It's like give him the keys. I just think they see some layers here where it's like, okay, we start here where he's spacing the floor. We see how defenses react. We run handoffs. Then it's pick and pop stuff. We see how if the big is stepping up. Then it's like, all right, the big stepping up a little more. Now Bam can play off closeouts, and he's getting to the rim a lot more. I personally believe, like we did a kind of on 5 on the floor, we did like a hot take predictions type thing. One of my hot takes is I think Bam could be top 10 to top 15 of free throw attempts. I think the 3-point shooting makes that jump. Like I think he could kind of start doing stuff more to the rim, less fadeaway mid ranges that he was really good at. But like it's not the best shot in the world for him. Like I think there's better. He's just such a unique player that I think there's better options. So to answer your question, give him the keys. I also believe like like I said before, you're going to see different rotation. Like this starting lineup thing, you're not going to see Bam with the starters 24/7 like we are. So it's like of course there's going to be less opportunities for him right now to get a ton of shots up. So I think my take on it, I think the rotation probably is Tyler and Jimmy exit early and Duncan and Jaime come in. So it's probably like a Terry, Duncan, Jaime, Bam type lineup that comes in secondary. And that's in a lineup where he's going to be utilized a lot more offensively. That's a lineup where he's going to be used in that mid-range a lot more, stuff at the rim. I just think the starting lineup is where he's going to shoot most of his threes. Like that's kind of their base offense there. And like I also like I know we're excited about the threes and we keep like putting baselines of what it's going to be. But like I don't think he's going to be standing out there as much as we have seen too. Like I just think this is all like trial stuff. Like they're just trying to figure stuff out right now. But I do think just the fact that he doesn't have a lot of weaknesses right now in his game offensively, like it's going to be a layered thing throughout the season they can get to.
So Brady, before we close, and I want to go around the horn and get everybody's prediction before we hop off. I saw Greg made his prediction on Twitter for a few things. So I want to ask you guys specifically, who do you think is going to be the Heat's leading scorer in the regular season? So who do you think, Brady? We'll go with you first.
They're one of the tougher teams to predict with this because they have like 3 guys that are going to be hovering around each other. But for some of the reasons that I just talked about, I kind of do think this the year it is Bam. I know a lot of people are saying it's Tyler, but I do think, look, if he's shooting 35% from 3, and he's getting up 2 to 3 attempts, like let's just go bare minimum. Like that's a points per game jump alone. Like that gets things up. And then you add in the fact that I really do believe you see more free throw attempts from him. That's more easy points for him to kind of rack up. So I do think there's just going to be like the way he was getting to his 19, I think it was around 19 to 20 points per game last year was like taxing. It was a difficult 20. Like he's shooting some tough shots where I think this year it's going to be a little bit easier. And more than anything, knock on wood somewhere right here, he's been the most available player. Like he's the guy that's consistently going to be there. So if Jimmy's out, a certain number of games, he's the guy that's picking up the slack. If anybody's out, like he's picking up the points per game slack. And that's really where you see the difference, I feel like, on this roster with the scoring. But I do think it's Bam, but it's going to be slightly. Like they're going to be all hovered around each other.
Yeah, makes sense. Trent, who do you think is going to be the leading scorer before we hop?
I know this is not going to happen because of having Tyler on the roster, but I need Terry Rozier 2023-2024 Charlotte Hornets when the dude is averaging 23 points a game because we gave up a first for Terry, and I get it. It's different roles, different teams. We have a better roster constructed and stuff like that. But I need to see aggressive Terry. I need him attacking the rim, shooting more threes because in Charlotte, that dude was chucking a lot of threes. And like I said, I understand the difference between the two teams, but that'll be like kind of my hot take for the year. Like I want Terry to lead this team in scoring because if that's the case, then we already know what Jimmy and Bam are going to do and Tyler in the regular season. So I think that can be a big for Miami.
What about you, Ernest?
I mean, I was going to say Bam originally, but I don't want to do the same thing. So I think Jimmy Butler can still lead the team in scoring, especially, being a contract year. You know what players do in contract year. They want to show out with this whole drama that happened in the offseason, especially with the passing of his dad. I think Jimmy Butler's ready to give a big remember who I am during the season. So I think it still could be Jimmy.
I'm not doing this on purpose because my answer actually was going to be Tyler Hero, just because he's one of our best 3-point shooters out of our big four, if you want to call it that. He's the best 3-point shooter, and his catch and shoot 3-point percentage was, I don't remember exactly in the top of my head, but like anywhere from 42 to 43%, somewhere in that range. So he could be way more efficient, because besides availability, consistency was an issue with him, obviously, offensively. So I think Tyler, also putting on those 12 pounds, like, can maybe help him absorb some contact, because he gets blocked a lot at the rim. And I know Spo and folks don't want him to do any more of those floaters, right? Because that's kind of a mid-range shot, which we're trying to get away from. So I'm going to say Tyler, just to not be different, because I think that could be possible. So we'll see. But anyway, Brady, before we hop off, I know most of our audience is probably following you guys, following your Twitter and following the 5 Reasons Sports Network YouTube page. But do you want to let the audience know where they can find you and some of the different things that you guys are going to be working on throughout the season?
5 on the Floor podcast. My handle is BradyHawk305 on Twitter, and that's pretty much it. We have our Off the Floor Discord with a bunch of Heat content as well. And other than that, we covering all the 41 home games once again. So hopefully it's at least more fun basketball than we witnessed last year.
For sure. So thanks again, Brady. Really appreciate your time. Ernest, anything else?
You guys know the drill. Like, share, subscribe. Team to be Miami Heat Network, Miami Heat Talk. Don't forget about Martell and Miami Heat Zone podcast. Appreciate you guys.